Carl, what's one of your most deeply held beliefs that you have? That I'm going to be hit by a meteorite and instantly incinerated? That's not even a belief, that's just like a prediction. Oh, a hope. Really, you are unbelievable, Carl. Welcome back. In the last episode, I suggested that you might be wrong about your core beliefs, and that we ought to adopt an outlook of intellectual humility. In this video, we're going to explore the idea of belief a lot more closely, and we're going to suggest 4 diagnostic questions that can help us to evaluate our own beliefs. Let's discuss. Contemporary philosophers tend to describe belief as a particular stance that we take toward a particular claim, and the stance has to do with the truthfulness or falsity of the claim. For example, if Carl says that he believes he can run a marathon in under 4 hours, Carl is taking a stance about the claim that it is possible, under the right conditions, for him to run 26.2 miles in under 4 hours. And the stance he's taking is that that claim is true. By the way, it's not. There's no way he could do it. What? No, I didn't say anything, Carl. Did you say something? Now, if belief is a particular stance that we take toward a claim, a stance of truthfulness or falsity, what then is knowledge? Some philosophers, though not all, claim that knowledge is a particular kind of belief, one that meets 2 criteria. First, it is a justified belief, and second, the belief happens to be true. Now let's set aside whether or not that's a good definition of knowledge, and focus instead on a very interesting question that the definition raises. What is a justified belief? What criteria can we use to decide which beliefs are justified and which beliefs aren't justified? It might be interesting to take a few moments to ask yourself, what criteria do you use to decide whether or not a belief is justified? Personally, 2 criteria that I like to fall back on are, 1, does the belief cohere with all the best evidence that we have available to us? And 2, is the belief compatible with other justified beliefs that we have? If a belief I have coheres with the best evidence available and is compatible with other justified beliefs, I tend to think of it as a candidate for a justified belief. However, if my belief doesn't fit the best evidence available or contradicts other justified beliefs, I'm less likely to be confident that it is a justified belief. However, as a side note, it's important to make this caveat. Just because your belief is justified doesn't mean that it's true. And just because a belief is unjustified doesn't mean that it's not true. It has more to do with how confident we ought to be in our belief than whether or not that belief is actually true. We'll talk about that more in future videos. This point suggests that not all of our beliefs should warrant equal confidence. There's a spectrum between justified and unjustified beliefs, and that spectrum dictates how confident we probably should be in our beliefs. Some beliefs that we have, for instance, the earth is round. Sorry, Carl, I know you're part of that flat earth group, but I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure that you're wrong here. Anyway, the belief that the earth is round seems extremely justified. It fits all the best evidence that we have, and it doesn't contradict any other beliefs we have that are justified. However, the claim that the universe is 7,000 years old seems unjustified, because it flies in the face of all the best evidence we have about the age of the earth and the age of the universe, and it seems to contradict other justified beliefs that we have, for instance concerning the speed of light. Between these 2 extremes, on the one hand an extremely justified belief, and on the other hand an extremely unjustified belief, there's lots of space for middle ground. For example, the belief that intelligent life exists on other planets aside from Earth seems to be more justifiable than the claim that the universe is 7,000 years old, but less justifiable than the claim that the Earth is round. Acknowledging this spectrum raises an interesting question. How do we know where our particular beliefs fit on the spectrum between unjustified and justified beliefs? As one way of beginning to answer this question, I'd like to suggest 4 diagnostic questions that we can ask of our particular beliefs. First, what do I believe? Now this question might seem silly, it might seem obvious, of course you know what you believe, but try it. Take a particular belief that you have and try to be as specific as possible in defining what the belief actually is. Let's say, for instance, someone says, I believe in God. Okay, well what does that mean? Can we be more specific? What God are we talking about? A personal God or an apersonal force? Are we talking about a single but Trinitarian God like in Christianity? Or the more radical monotheism of Islam? Are we talking about a God who is good, all-knowing, all-powerful, and just? Or are we talking about a God who maybe is all good but not all-powerful or all-knowing? Are we talking about a God who created the world or merely exists alongside of the world? We could continue to specify more and more what exactly our belief is, and the more we specify exactly what it is that we believe, the more valuable our diagnostic questions will be. The second question, how did I come to believe this? There's a number of ways that people can come to believe what they believe. In some cases, belief might be related to our trust in authorities. For example, I believe that in a vacuum, light travels at roughly a speed of 186,282 miles per second. I don't believe this because I've tested it myself. I haven't. I believe it because since the 1980s, this has been the consistent claim of a group of authorities, scientists. And I have no reason to doubt this claim. I accept it. No, Carl, I don't think claims about the speed of light are some conspiracy to make us all buy popsicles. I don't even understand why that would be the case. Oh, cherry-flavored popsicles. You might be onto something there, though. I mean, why else would anyone buy cherry-flavored popsicles? Carl makes an inadvertently good point. And let's be honest, all of Carl's good points are inadvertently made. And that is that authorities can lead us astray. For example, a child might believe that Santa Claus lives in the North Pole and that every year, once a year, he travels around the entire world delivering gifts to children who are on his nice list. No, Carl, no, I'm not saying that that belief is wrong. Of course it's right. Of course Santa is real and he delivers gifts to you. Of course that's right. The point is, sometimes authorities can lead us astray. We can also come to believe things because of personal or communal experiences. Some people believe in God or aliens because they've had experiences that they interpret as interactions or encounters with these kinds of beings. In perhaps a less controversial example, personal experience can lead us to beliefs that we take to be mundane. For example, I believe that the sun will rise tomorrow. Well, not rise technically, Carl, since we have a round Earth, and the Earth is not the center of the universe. It's not really rising, but you get the idea. Anyway, I believe the sun will rise tomorrow because my personal experience suggests that this will happen. It's risen every day that I've been alive. And furthermore, the communal experience of others confirms this belief. I've never met anybody who lives at least in my geographical location who claims that the sun didn't rise one day. Well, in some cases, people live in certain geographical locations where there's like day for like a few months and night for a few months, but screw those people. Belief can also come about as a matter of persuasion. For example, imagine that I believe that Michael Jordan is the GOAT when it comes to basketball, but certainly not baseball. Carl, on the other hand, believes that LeBron James is the GOAT. After a spirited debate, Carl becomes convinced that my views are better than his, which is almost certainly true. And Carl changes his view, accepting that Michael Jordan is in fact the GOAT. In this case, Carl was persuaded by my superior and eloquent reasoning that he was wrong on his position and therefore changes his belief. The origin of the belief is an act of persuasion. Of course, there are other ways that you can come to believe something. The point is for you to evaluate as honestly as you can how you came to believe the belief that you hold. Because beliefs come from somewhere in our history, in our narrative. Identifying where they come from might help us to evaluate them. The third question is probably one of the most difficult questions. Why do I continue to believe what I believe? Let's be honest, beliefs don't require self-reflection or even logical clarity. We can believe things without even realizing that we believe them. They're implicit beliefs. Other beliefs we just accept without really ever questioning them. For example, most people seem to believe that it's morally acceptable to eat meat. But my guess is that most of these people have never actually questioned that belief. They've never challenged it. They've never asked why they believe that it's morally acceptable to eat meat. They just do. But that seems odd, doesn't it? Core beliefs that are central to who we are, beliefs that affect how we live on an everyday basis. Those kinds of beliefs seem to warrant investigation and reflection. This raises the question, why do we continue to believe what we believe? Is it a matter of blind faith? Have we evaluated all of the available evidence and come to the conclusion that the belief is reasonable? Have we ignored evidence to the contrary and only focused on evidence that supports our belief because maybe we want to believe that it's true? Maybe it's easier to believe that it's true. Whatever the reason, it's important for us to evaluate why we continue to believe what we believe, especially when these beliefs are central to our identity. Again, this third question tends to be the most difficult. It requires some brutal self-reflection and honest research. That is, research that goes beyond confirmation bias and seeks out all the available evidence to make an informed decision. It forces us to look hard at this evidence and ask whether that evidence fits the criteria that we have for what constitutes a justified belief. And if it doesn't, then we're stuck with the question, should I change my belief? The idea that there might be counter-evidence to our beliefs leads to the fourth question. Why do others believe differently than me? Sometimes it's tempting to think that our beliefs are completely reasonable and other beliefs are completely irrational or problematic. For example, I've met Christians who think that believing in the resurrection of the dead is supremely reasonable, but believing in reincarnation is absolutely silly. But is the notion of reincarnation really that much less believable than the claim that hundreds, maybe thousands of years from now, this body that has decayed will be formed back together and resurrected? I don't know. But the point here is that maybe we ought to enact a kind of golden rule when it comes to beliefs. Treat the beliefs of others as you would have others treat your own beliefs. That is, at least consider your own views as critically as you would consider the views of others. And consider the views of others as graciously as you would consider your own. Getting past confirmation bias means accepting the possibility that some evidence out there might not support your belief. It might support other beliefs. In fact, the majority of evidence out there might support someone else's beliefs. And that that's why someone might believe differently than you. Understanding that and embracing that helps us to be 1, empathetic about the beliefs of others, and 2, foster that sense of intellectual humility about our own beliefs. In this video, we talked about the concept of belief a bit more closely. We then considered 4 diagnostic questions that help us to evaluate where our beliefs might fit on that spectrum from justified to unjustified beliefs. I invite you to take a belief and put it through these questions. See what you come up with, and see whether or not after you answer those diagnostic questions, you think your belief is justified or unjustified, or somewhere in between. In our next episode, we're going to analyze beliefs a bit more deeply by considering different forms of arguments to support beliefs. Until then, farewell.